Okay, good morning, everyone. It is 9:01. We are here on September 9th, 2024, ready for a strategic planning meeting. I believe we have 4 commissioners in the meeting room. I know Commissioner French is here. I think he must be detained for a moment. So he should be showing. Surely his stuff is on here.
Actually, not involuntarily.
Exactly, sorry.
There's the right word.
So he is now arriving. So we will go ahead and get started. We have Mike Burgess. Mike, welcome this morning.
Morning, commissioners. I think your plan here was to follow up and kind of finish your discussion last week on, I think, lining up behind the capital budget project that you wanted to make the request for the governor's budget. And then we didn't really talk about the policy stuff last week very much. So I think the goal was to follow up on that.
No, correct. And I don't think we have our copies of that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Can you?
Oh, you don't have, sorry, Ron, can you, there you go.
There we go. Yes, if you can just put on the screen.
Can you make it bigger? On bigger policies.
This. Just perfect.
Yeah, it's very busy.
So I think the way I walked away from last week was, you had the bottom 5 there, but let's take PFAS. Let's just say we move that up a little bit. But I had gotten the indication that doing letters of support for the Hilliard Daycare Conservation District, the Bellevue Water District, and the YMCA, and then continuing to work on PFAS, but it sounded like Plants Ferry and the crisis stabilization had risen to the top, is the way I took it, walked away from it. And then possibly Plants Ferry being the one that you would include in a request to the governor's office.
That was my recollection of what we talked about last week, Commissioner French.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that we're not de-emphasizing, some of the other items. What we said was that we were going to be writing letters of support for other agencies that would be the recipient of those monies and stuff. So with regard to the filtration systems, that would either go to ecology or go to the health district, because we thought they'd be better administrators of the program than us. But is my memory accurate, or is there a difference?
You talked about the letters of support.
Okay. Before I got here.
Well,
We talked about it last week.
we talked about it last week, but I thought you said the other items we were going to be doing letters of support for, the ones that were not on our top of our priority list.
Okay.
Yeah, Commissioner, I probably just
Done.
misspoke. I mean, what I thought is those items would still be on your list, but the county's lead priorities would be those other 3.
And then you did state that we do letters of support for the conservation district, for the water district, for the that we'll be doing those separately.
Yeah. They
will be our second tier of items that we support. Because PFAS, we don't have any numbers or any of that. But Plants Ferry and the crisis stabilization would be our top 2 priorities for funding. And I'm just going to try to reiterate from last week, and Plants Ferry would be our number 1 that we would ask in the governor's budget,
Right.
as well as in the top priority. I did meet with the city of Spokane Valley. They're actually talking about having Plants Ferry, asking for an ask for Plants Ferry as well, so we can continue the phasing, just because it does help their city and their economy. And so there's potential for a joint ask of like $2 million. Them asking, we ask for $1 million, they ask for $1 million. But that's in the preliminary stage right now. Mike, when I was out talking to John Holman, I called Mike and said, hey, do you have a minute? So we did talk about that with John Holman. And so Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be a joint request, not, I think one of the ideas I'd heard was that, say the county asked for $1 million, the city of Spokane Valley asked for a different $1 million. I think it just makes more sense. It's more transparent to just ask for the whole project amount. And if in fact that is $2 million, maybe it's more, maybe it's less. But then, Commissioner, did you get the sense that the city had planned the city of Spokane Valley had planned to do a ask of the governor as well? I forgot to ask that day.
I think if we were going to, they were gonna do it, I think, trying to figure out if we combine it or what we do. So I
Right.
think I was kind of leaving that to you and their lobbyists to.
Okay. I mean, I think it would make sense to combine that request. I know we're getting closer on a time frame, but I think that's the way to do it.
Okay. And so who would Jeff McMorris work with? He works with you for kind of our section. Do you and Brianna, is it Brianna who's there?
Yeah, I'll reach out to her after this and let her know that we want to do this. So maybe I can connect Jeff via email with the person she wants at the city, or it might just end up being her. I don't really know, but I'll find that out.
And I don't know if the city council is on board with that. That was just John Holman and I and Councilmember Wick.
Sure. Okay, so it sounds like they have some work to do on their end, but
I don't know. I mean, that's where I don't know the ins and outs there. So yeah, so it'd just be some further discussions. If everybody, I want to make sure everybody here was okay with trying to do it as a combined ask.
yeah, but it does sound like then for the purposes of your agenda, Plants Ferry, crisis stabilization, and the PFAS, and then the others that I didn't mention will also be on the list, but not secondarily, but letters of support for those agencies that are making the request. And then the green buildings, I still think we should include a note, but acknowledging that one's on hold in terms of that list I talked about and the information that's all going to be gathered that'll be more timely for the 2026 legislative session.
So last week we talked about, having some other agency actually administer the grant money, and whether it was the health district or ecology, one of those two, I think, make the most sense since, a couple of you sit on the health board. Is this something that we would carry, or you could carry to the health board and say, hey, do we want to administer the money, assuming that we get it? Because they are heavily involved in this and they have the tools to be able to do it. I just want to make sure that I'm coordinating with somebody that wants to be coordinated with. Does that make sense? And stuff. So it's like my first date at the prom. Well, she didn't want to go. What could I say? Anyway, so if the health district would be the first priority, I'm fine. We are finalizing the numbers on the grant amount and stuff. So I'm going to do one more call through a press release later on this week to try and say, hey, anybody that wants to sign on, sign on. This is the last time, so we can finalize the numbers. Hopefully by the end of October, have a hard number we can go to the state with. And then I think Graham, Bolts, and Holy are ready to take it forward. And I've had one preliminary conversation with Bricelli, but not in the same level of detail. So I need to follow back up with him. But hopefully it'll come together. So anyway, just an update. And that's where I'm at.
I don't know, as chair and vice chair, either one of you reached out to the health district last week after our meeting.
I have not spoken with anybody about the specific grant. We
Okay.
can certainly float that to them and say, hey, is this something we have the capacity for at the health district? I don't know. We'll
I
see.
don't think they'll have the capacity. I mean, so it's gonna
I'm
be
thinking
like,
it
what
would have
is
to pay for a portion of like an environmental health
person?
position. I know the person that they hired to take on some of what Mike LaScola was doing is only doing part-time like what he was doing. So maybe there's an opportunity to build out that position on, on more of the toxics work. So, yeah, I think we should follow up. We have an executive committee meeting next week. So.
Yeah, I was gonna add to the hard cost, the 10% to administer, so it would cover, because I'm assuming that whoever does it is gonna need manpower to do it and stuff. So if 10% is not big enough, let me know. I don't have a hard number. I'll have a hard number, but in terms of the administrative side, or if we want to call it out and say this position is going to be X number, I'm good either way. Just let me know which way works best. And if not, if the health district doesn't do it, then I think the next one is ecology. and stuff. And so I'll reach out to Brooke and coordinate with her but I think it would be better for health first.
I think it would fall in their wheelhouse.
Fall in their
Yeah,
wheelhouse.
They do a lot of the toxics, human health toxics
Yeah.
coordination, so.
Okay.
I think that would be, seems like that would, but. So I'm sure they'll follow up, we can float the idea, and then there'll be some follow-up on what those administrative costs might be.
Okay,
We'll put it on their radar though.
thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like you're,
Just a second, Mike.
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Jordan wants to go.
So last week there was an idea, we were talking about sending a letter to ecology or that they had information that we needed. Is that no longer needed?
At this point, we actually have got them to respond.
Good.
They haven't responded with everything yet, so since we're in an active dialogue with them, we need to send a letter. If for some reason it starts to shut down, then maybe we do, but as long as they're starting to communicate, then I'm happy to just do that. Not try and draw any lines in the sand kind of a deal. Thank you.
They must have responded because we talked about it here, right?
Yeah, my guess is somewhere it got back to them. So,
Very good.
okay.
Okay, so Mike, go ahead.
okay, so it sounds like got the capital budget portion taken care of. Now on the policy side, which we didn't get a chance to talk too much about last week. None of these are new concepts to you as a board, I don't think. Green buildings. So in addition to there being a capital request, there's a policy question there. But again, I think that's going to be on hold given what we talked about in terms of better timing for the 2026 legislature. I heard from almost all of you about condo liability. I'll skip the TIF one for just a second. On the caseload standards for AOC, I know you're familiar with that. On the PFAS one, that's an extension of the related somewhat, I guess, to the capital budget request. Let's see, Commissioner Waldorf in particular, you mentioned some housing related policies that you might have some ideas about. And then I always put GMA policies on there. I did talk to your staff. I don't get the sense that there's a single request this year. Remember, we did some stuff on the land swaps a couple years ago, and then, or wait, land swap was maybe last year, and the capital facilities plans the years previous. Don't get the sense that there's anything there, but I still think we'd want to maintain a note on your agenda about GMA policies. We can come up with a kind of a blanket statement. So going back up on the condo liability, the legislature has passed legislation, but as I've talked to you all, it sounds like that legislation didn't go far enough. Those are my words. But I think that there's an interest in continuing to grow that and expand that. And then on the TIF flexibility, Commissioner French, I don't want to put you on the spot, but that was one of the concepts that came from you, and I think it was a good one. But if you'd like to explain what you were talking about, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, so as you know, when I did my town hall meeting on December 14th of last year, Todd Trepanair and others from WashDOT Local were in the audience, and he came down afterwards and he said, God, this is a great tool. Can we extend it to the state? And so that if we create a TIF boundary and there's a state asset in there, can we create the authorization for the state to take some of their sales tax money and apply it to their infrastructure inside the TIF boundary? And I said, that's a great idea. I don't know. And so I've been floating it to Andy Billig and Mike Volz and a couple others. And Andy was the one who got most excited about it because he said, one, I don't have new transportation money, so this is bring new money to the table. And it would force the money to be spent in that area, so I don't have to worry about it being fluxed away. So I am drafting the language that will expand the TIF ordinance to include the opportunity for local jurisdictions to use that for state projects. I've at this point, it sounds like I'm going to get support from FMCIB, CRAB, and I don't know about TIB yet, but I know about CRAB and FMCIB and stuff. So, and I've got both sides of the aisle that are saying, yeah, this is a good tool. So let's make it happen. So I'm just trying to put the language to that ordinance to make that happen. And then with regard to the public safety, there's some question as to whether the TIF allows you to invest in certain public safety aspects. And so Andy said, let's just add the language to the ordinance so that and then it not specific about, you know, you can build this kind of structure, that, just say public safety, and then anything that falls into that category, then we can fund it and stuff. So that's what that is about. So.
Commissioner, when you say ordinance, I assume you meant the RCW that are
Yes.
authorized. Okay, perfect. So
Yeah.
in terms of that language, if you could get that to me as soon as you can, that'd be great, because I would like to start the drafting process with legislative staff, assuming that I have the blessing here of the board to go forward with this and want to add this to our agenda. And the reason I say that, because if we're going to get a bill drafted, I want to get going on it, because it does take time.
Well, and it has been suggested to me by, I think it was Volts, that, you know, if I just get the draft language to him, he'll have the House attorneys draft up the final language. So,
But that's exactly what I would have done too. So Commissioner,
Okay.
that's great.
all right.
No, I mean, perfect. As
We'll
long
get
as
it
I
to
just
you.
know who's doing it or it's getting done.
Yep. All right.
But is that something that the board wants to move forward with in terms of, for my involvement there?
And I think as long as the state, you know, using their part of their sales tax to help fund it, I don't see why. I think it'll be a big lift, but I mean, there's no reason not to ask.
Yeah, not to ask. And I mean, it meets with concurrency requirements, you know, the state has accepted themselves from concurrency, but without that, you know, you still can't move projects forward. So.
Yeah, commissioners, and I mean, just my amateur handicapping, on this one, I don't see a downside to the ask. I mean, I would play a devil's advocate if I could on this one, but I just don't see it. I mean, in some ways it's no money's free, but you know, pardon the expression, but it seems like free money to local projects at the end of the day is the way I see it. But it's entirely possible I'm missing something on it. But anyway, I think it's a good step to get it drafted and start moving forward, to at least have the discussion and find out what the problems are.
Andy, one of the reasons why Andy liked it was that this now gives incentives for local jurisdictions to get money for state projects when the state doesn't have money to fund it. And so
Yeah.
he thought, geez, this gets new money to the table. Why wouldn't we do this? So anyway, so we'll float it and see what happens.
Okay, so it sounds like we should go forward with the drafting.
Commissioner Jordan.
I'd just like to see the language, that's all. Just take,
Oh,
it
yeah.
sounds really like an interesting concept, so happy to look at language.
Okay.
Okay. And then, okay, the
Next.
next one then, oh, sorry.
Mr. Macio.
Madam Chair, I just want to be sure the board understands that there are four kinds of TIFs. And so Commissioner French has always lobbied correctly to include as what the TIF monies can be used for, public safety. That's an easy lift. I can't imagine anyone not agreeing with that. It's much more complicated, as Commissioner French knows, to modify the TIF language to allow a proportionate share of the increased sales tax that the state would get as a result of the TIF to be used for transportation projects. And I think Commissioner CUNY, you've probably noted that it's much a heavier lift and it will require a lot more working with the legislature. So I think what we'll probably do is work with Randy's staff and possibly Mr. Cogan, who still, if you will, provide services free to the county, to come up with some language, Commissioner French, because it is very complicated. But it can be done.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to be sure.
Yeah.
We're going to modify all four TIF options to
Right.
provide this mechanism.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And then on the caseload standards issue, I think Commissioner French, you brought that one up too. To me, in earnest, what was your concept there?
Well, I didn't have a concept. I was just complaining.
Okay. Is that a legislative fix then?
I think isn't Wasac gonna be putting in?
Yes.
Yes, I think from the LSC committee, there's language Wasac's gonna be putting in to try to figure out how to handle it.
Is
Um,
this,
we still
is
don't know
this
what
related to the juvenile detention issue? Is it a
No,
separate issue? Okay.
this is the public defenders.
Oh,
And this is the new
Oh.
standards that are coming down that are in front of the Supreme Court right now.
I'm tracking now.
So,
Okay, so then sounds like we want to monitor what Wasak's ask is on that and probably support that.
yes,
Do we have any
just a second.
idea
Commissioner Jordan.
what is that ask shaping up to be? Is it just if there's an
Don't know yet.
increase, please pay for it, or?
In a perfect world, we'd have them pay for it. And I think that's kind of the general sense of the LSC is, hey, you're gonna increase the cost, cover it, kind of deal, because we can't and stuff. So, so that's the general sense. But with that, we haven't finalized, and my guess is in November, we'll start to finalize what that looks like. So we're ready to go to the legislature.
There's
Think-
two happening simultaneously. We've got
Yes.
the lawsuit.
Yeah.
That we're appealing right now. And then, that was pre the caseload standards changing. And then with the caseload standards changing, there's discussion, do we try to negotiate that the legislature pays for any increases? We put a stop date as, here's our cost at today's date.
Yeah.
And then, does the legislature pay for anything above and beyond it? Because it truly is a state responsibility. It's not like the, you could say district court could potentially be a responsibility. But it's really,
Local responsibility.
yeah, the public defense is really a state responsibility.
Yeah.
Would the prosecution be under that way of looking at it?
I don't think they'll do that, but but it is, I mean, we are doing all of that on behalf of the state on felonies.
Right.
Just like the jail is a felony jail that we're paying for as well for everybody. So I don't know what the rest of it, we are focused on the public defense.
One issue at a time.
And then Commissioner, this would fit then, there were a few bills last year that would have assisted public defense, both in dollars, and then there was some like pilot programs to increase attorneys, public defenders in different counties. That might not have affected you because it might have been more for the rural counties. But this is all part of that issue, right? All increasing the access to it.
Commissioner,
When we were discussing this, and afterwards, there were a couple of commissioners that were actually talking about floating an initiative and having the state take over all the courts. The state of Washington is one of 5 states in the country where they pay for the courts at the local level. All the rest of them are paid for at the state. So why don't we just push this by initiative and take it and let the state take all of it? They want to keep on increasing costs, you pay for it, not us.
I don't think I've heard you say the state should take over things before.
Oh,
Commissioner.
anything that costs money. Yeah.
Madam Chair, could I just add, I would be interested if there are opportunities to advocate for bills that help with the pipeline of prosecutors and public defenders. Maybe we could advocate to broaden the scope of those bills, because it's not just rural counties that have challenges recruiting, whether it's loan forgiveness or something like that. I think that seems like an opportunity as part of this conversation. So maybe we can add something to our agenda or look at other bills on that topic that might come forward.
yeah, so Mike, if you could be paying attention to that.
I will.
I think we do a loan forgiveness, like through the government after 10 years.
Federally.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the bills in the
Allow that.
legislature were something additional, I believe,
okay.
or earlier. I don't recall it off the top of my head, but
There were 2 or 3 bills last year. I know we discussed them and then they didn't pass. And so, once the bills die, I just kind of move on the focus on things that are still moving.
Okay. I see Pat Bell raised his hand.
I was just going to mention that might be one too to talk to the State Bar Association about, Mike. I know they
Yeah.
have a committee for small towns and rural counties, and it seems like I've seen something in the past or talk from their Board of Governors about this, very similar to a state program to get doctors, nurses, and healthcare providers in rural counties.
Yep.
Thank you,
Okay.
Pat.
The next item there, the trust water agreement, Commissioner French, you had brought that one up to me.
Yes, so it was suggested to me that legislation that would encourage ecology to work with communities to try and overcome the presence of PFAS might provide some incentive for them to not just be rulemaking, but be part of the solution. And so I'm not exactly sure what this language is looking like. I know a couple people are taking a swing at it, but we need to, and it's not just here in Spokane, it's our also a problem on the other side of the state as well. We need to make sure that all of us are rowing in the same direction. And ecology is still working on old legislation, not new legislation that incorporates PFAS. So that's the big goal. The detail is still being worked out. But basically, we need ecology can be the stopping block for a lot of solutions unless they have authority from the legislature to say, okay, we can do this. And that's what we're trying to do, is give them the flexibility to where they can do things that are kind of outside of their normal course of conduct.
Okay, so it sounds like, oh, sorry.
More language coming.
Okay, so it sounds like I'll wait on that to see that, and then the
Yeah.
board discuss that in the future. And then the last one, Commissioner Waldorf, did you have something to add on the housing related policies? I mean, I know there's always going to be bills supporting enhanced housing, but you had mentioned something that I thought you'd heard about from another state that you were going to look into a little further.
Well, next week, I'm actually meeting with the SLIC, the Spokane Low Income Housing Consortium. So I was actually going to chat with other, kind of get the lay of the land, find out what they're hearing in terms of bills. And then I'd be happy to bring back some ideas. But I thought, I know there's some different things floating around. There was a forum in June related to the expo, a policy forum that the Lands Council hosted with a bunch of folks. And there was a whole session on housing, and there were some state legislators there with some different ideas. I think a lot of it is less about, I think there will be movement, or at least an attempt this session, around identifying funding to support building more affordable housing. But that will be an interesting, where that funding will come from and in the amount needed. You know, I think it's an ongoing conversation. So I think it might end up being more around revenue for affordable housing and where that might come from. I don't know what you're hearing. If you're hearing anything else like that, Mike.
I've heard the same. There will always be the discussions about the revenue. There was the issue on I think it was the REIT doing some more tax on the REIT side to help fund it, but the bills didn't pass. But you're right, there will be the dialogue, I imagine, this session around funding issues. And I mean, we can always make a note on the agenda about housing related policies, and we can come up with a narrative to include there. But I'd be curious to hear what you see from those advocates.
I think I have a meeting next week, like the 18th or so. So I don't know when we circle back with you again.
Okay. And then maybe that would be a good thing that we readdress with the group, with your group, the 5 of you, as we get closer to session and finalize. Because I think next steps, based on what I'm hearing from you all, is I think I have some pretty decent clarity to work with Jeff to get a more expanded document started to draft, which would start to look more like your final agenda with an expansion. So obviously not just list something that says condo liability, give more of a narrative about what that means and the type of legislation we're looking to support. And if we have more specificity, which it sounds like we might on the TIF flexibility issue, kind of build that agenda out and revisit this in another 3 weeks to a month with you all. I will come back to you with Jeff in a month or so, and maybe by then you would have had some of those discussions, and then get to a point where you all can adopt an agenda by the middle of October. I think would be great, if not a little bit sooner. But does that sound like a good plan? And I'll work with Jeff on that, getting it drafted.
Sounds good to me. I was just, one more thing to throw in was whether we wanted to check in with Justin about whether there's any behavioral health related funding ask that we want to, either a general statement about continue funding XYZ state programs. We just don't want to leave that off, I don't think. If Justin has things that would be useful.
So Mike, a lot of
Yeah,
times
Commissioner,
that-
I can, oh, sorry, Commissioner, but I can do that outreach too, because Wasac had some staffing changes, but I'm pretty close with the person that does behavioral health at Wasac, and I will check with him as well.
Okay, because that's a lot of times some of the other, I know on the elected side, sometimes they'll ask us to support or not of bills, but they've got their own groups that are doing it. And Justin, I thought, you know, I don't know, in the past, I think he and Kathleen were always talking to somebody. There was some group that they were working with. They weren't always coming through the commissioners. So I don't know, Mike, if you remember.
Yeah, they have their state association that works in concert with Wasac. And the other thing is, and commissioners, just because something isn't on our agenda, when a bill gets introduced, I will bring it to you and we'll have that discussion. As session goes on, and even pre-files back in December and things like that I'll bring to your attention. But I can reach out to him and see if they have anything major that maybe even he would say, hey, yeah, I'd like you to take it to the commissioners, or I'll ask him to do that. But I can have that conversation with him first.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Thanks. I think
The only
it's
other-
always trying to not bog down our agenda with so
Yes.
many things that we can be more focused, and they're more focused on their issues as well.
Right, I remember last year, I think, wasn't there they finally got increased rates for folks who work with adults with disabilities. I think they finally got them some increased dollars to pay people a higher wage, because that was a real struggle. So that, those little wins, like they can come to us and we can always write a letter of support for those types of things. Yeah.
Well, and there was, last year, the big thing was getting, I think the legislation passed to have more accountability from the healthcare authority to the MCOs. That there wasn't as much accountability there. So I know that was one of the big things last year.
And I don't know if there's anything coming. I know at the health district, I think the board policy committee will start meeting and looking at some of the public health. I know there's gonna be pressure. We're all feeling the impacts of inflation on all of our government organizations. And so I know that the health district will be looking at either continued or increased funding for essential public health services. So something we can support as well. Because if the money's got to come from somewhere.
Yes, and yeah, we always have more money. So, okay, Mike, is there anything else?
No, this gives me what I need, and I'll work with Jeff, and maybe I'll have him circulate something to you individually, or we'll come back as a group, but I'll talk with him and we'll figure it out soon. But this has been good. I think we're on a good course to get this done sooner this year.
Okay, great. And then the governor's budget, because I know Jeff's on vacation, I think. So it's like, that's gonna be, because that's due soon.
I thought I heard him say last year that last week that he heard this week.
Yeah, I'm not sure what his schedule is, but, okay. So
Okay.
yes, so if you talk to, the City of the Valley's lobbyist.
I'll call. Yep.
And then, yeah, we can just go from there, see what we can get done.
All right. Very good. Thank you, commissioners. Have a good week.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Okay, that's gonna take us to Randy
Good morning, commissioners.
and Tessa.
And Tessa.
Fun thing of the budget.
On the budget, all right.
We gotta
Sorry,
go.
just getting
We
my
gotta go.
computer logged on here.
Got a hard stop now.
You know.
A hard stop at
cost of
10
living
o'clock, right?
increases And all of that, and yeah.
So on Friday, apologize for the lateness, but I did send each of you an invitation that you can have access to a shared file instead of sending everything around by email. Ron, did you want to pull up that access or did you want me to log in and share? How did you want?
The actual file or the link.
Do you have the link? Okay. Yeah, just click on that link. We'll go to the files. Go to your, if it's on your computer, you can go to your file manager. So there is the link to that file. It has the structure currently is the main shared folder. What we have in that is the agenda for upcoming meetings, what we want to go over, which we'll be discussing today, fleshing that out. For the general fund in that folder, it's going to be the budget book that you typically receive, hard copy. It's going to be probably the last one, the preliminary, no, the budget binder. Can't see that far, my eyes aren't working. You might want to expand that out. It's going to be dated 9.
Which file.
Yeah, they're two with the exact same, and it's showing up differently here than it does
Oh,
on
yes.
the file folder
Okay.
explorer. I don't know the words for it. But we removed one of them from there, so there should only be one.
Just
If you-
pick the one that you have my name on.
They're the same file.
Yeah, so
Just-
as you go through these, you can download these to your computer if you'd like, so that you could make changes to it personally. This is a read-only file in the shared thing, but if you want to download it, you should be able to do that. You can make edits. And this is what we will put out on our public-facing site after this meeting. So this is the preliminary book. It's gonna go through, what it's gonna have is for each agency, if you scroll down, or even if you're in the view where you see the
Bookmarks.
bookmarks, the index, you can click on
It's
search here.
that view.
It comes up mine automatically. I clicked on
Different when it's viewed on the web versus
Download.
launched in Adobe. But yes, yeah, if you download it,
Yeah, so if you go to that file, instead of opening it, you should be able to download that file. If you right click on it,
I just clicked on it. It opened right up.
okay,
Well, it opened, but it doesn't have the bookmarks. It's without the bookmarks, I don't know which page I wanna try to.
all right, I will
I think. Gina
call
picked it
IT and ask that question.
up. Then I need this.
Did you get it to
Yes.
with the bookmarks, Chris? How did you?
How did you?
share your
And it was
technology
Adobe
with
Acrobat.
complete.
I think there was two different documents in there that were the same, and maybe one had bookmarks,
Okay.
one didn't. That's my guess.
So you have to choose the right one.
Best guess I can give you. Or Chrissy's just, you know, not super
So
smart.
open.
Well, that could be two, but you know, I'm sure
This
she.
is the learning experience for all of us.
Yes.
Commissioner French.
Um,
I've already opened it and studied it.
so I guess,
A plus.
so we'll go through this a little bit later, but what first I'd like to do is
We have it online.
get the calendar. So let's go back to the calendar run. I just want to kind of review the calendar, make sure we have this set. Part of this is going to be talking about the public roundtables. So here we're at today, we're gonna talk about the general fund detail by agency. We're gonna go over some upcoming meeting agendas. And I just put a placeholder in here, start selecting agencies that we want to present to the board. We do have currently a scheduled meeting for next Monday, the 16th.
I would be out of town, so.
We will be out of town.
I would
Okay.
be out of
Do we want to move that to the 20, do we still want to have a budget meeting on the 16th? So these are questions that just trying to plan as we go through, where do we want to have these budget meetings? The 16th is a Monday, it's a week from today.
Yeah, we didn't have,
Was that not on our?
We're not scheduled to meet on the
Okay.
16th.
it was.
Then I will move everything from the 16th down to the 23rd. So are we are scheduled to meet on the 23rd, correct? Because that is the fourth Monday of the month.
Yes.
Okay,
What, can I ask, Randy,
Yeah.
what are you saying? What is to happen on that date?
so right now for the 16th, I was gonna give a revenue update, like, did we have more revenue? I was gonna talk about, are there any additional agencies after you've had a chance to look at the book more that you want to come present? That we didn't pick the first day. I was gonna present the 6-year capital plan or the beginning of that. Look at outside agencies, look at some of our special revenue funds like REIT 1, REIT 2, because that kind of ties in the capital plan. Look at car rental tax, conservation futures, historical preservation. I know we have some requests from the city of historical preservation. I know we have some uses for the courthouse that we've allocated some of that money to apply for a grant. So just kind of go through those things. If you did want any agencies presenting, we could have them start to present at that time, which would move out to the 23rd. And then any updates to supplemental request worksheet.
If you guys want to meet, I mean, that's fine. I just will not be.
Okay.
Could this
No.
be kicked to the 17th?
This could be kicked.
The next day?
Yeah.
I mean, instead of a week later, can it be the next day? I mean, because at this point, I mean, Mondays are usually for long term, but the budget's kind of becoming short term here
Right.
pretty quick,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, and we're fine moving this to the 17th. We can definitely do that. So that's why I kind of want to go through the calendar
I still
here.
know what we have,
Yeah.
what else is planned for the 17th.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, again, no, it never appeared on our calendar.
My apologies. I just thought it was only because it was the third Monday. That is my mistake. So. So we can definitely move, we can definitely have a session on the 17th. And then on the 23rd, if you want.
Well, I mean,
I don't know what else is-
Some of this is gonna have to start to just happen sooner.
It's probably gonna have to bleed into some Tuesdays. So
Yeah,
we get
but
all
we
done.
need to do like every Monday, start planning on every Monday for a little while.
And maybe that starts the 23rd. We start every Monday for a while. If we can't do the 16th, we could do the 17th next week, if that works for the commissioners.
We could come in the afternoon
We
as
could,
well.
yeah, we could do it after the
I mean,
2
we can
o'clock
be-
potentially.
Yeah.
Uh,
Flexible.
it doesn't have to be first thing in the morning.
They could do it all day
Could ruin the end of your day, it's the beginning of.
Yes.
on the 23rd, all day long.
Deep dive.
So yes, I'm actually out of town both days. I've got a trip that I'm doing with Max. So I will be gone to the 17th.
So it's-
Which day?
The 16th and the 17th.
Oh, okay.
I return on the 18th, so, I mean, I would say, I mean, I can do it on the 16th.
nobody has a meeting on 16th, so if you wanna push it back, we can, so.
Right, and if
Up to you guys.
have their mornings available on the 16th, I don't know. I just will,
Yeah.
yeah. Next week is not a week.
Not a good week.
But I mean, I can catch up, you and I can catch up on stuff.
Definitely.
So are you guys all available on
I'm
the
all
16th on Monday morning?
I am.
Yes.
All right, so we'll
Okay.
continue, we'll keep the 16th.
So
then.
yeah,
Because I'm
I think.
out on the 30th.
The next following Monday would be the 23rd, so I guess we are scheduled to meet that day.
yes, we have a
Like-
strategic planning meeting on the
Okay.
23rd.
So we will give a revenue update again. And the revenue updates, we have a target revenue right now. There's a few things we're working on just to make sure our revenue, so for example, the lead cap of the valley, we're going through the 23 lead cap right now. Just want to make sure all our assumptions that we put into the 25 budget are correct. There is some with the 2019 C bond defeasance. I'm working with the auditor's office, making sure I have the right revenue plan for the payments that come in 25. So that's really what I'm talking about, revenue updates. If we have any big changes, let you know, so that would mean you could have potentially more money to add back to the budget to the department requests. And then any other agency presentations. That's what I have on the agenda right now. Again, this is fluid. This is for you to add more things if you would like. Currently on the 24th, we are scheduled for our first public roundtable at the 2 o'clock legislative meeting. Mr. Amacho, we do need to publish this. Is that correct? Because it's
That we can do it either way, board members. We can simply place it on your 2 o'clock consent agenda as a public hearing item, or the other option, which we've always done, we've done a separate notice advising of all public roundtable meetings where the public will be afforded an opportunity to listen and also provide input to the Board of County Commissioners. And these public roundtable budget meetings are in addition to the statutory required one, which we're gonna have in the first week in December. So these are just additional meetings for the board to be briefed by staff, to discuss amongst yourself, and to take public comment to assist you. So we've always done that by a separate notice of public meeting for all three of them, Randy, and so that's what we're proposing now. So we need to be sure that in the notice, we indicate 1, when the meetings will be held. 2, that the public will be held to able to participate, and 3, the specific purposes of the 3 roundtable meetings. And Randy, can you share with the board what those would be, please?
Sure. The first meeting, typically, we have talked about general fund revenue, there's various sources of it. Gone into that in more detail than we typically hear. The second meeting, which right now is scheduled for October 15th, which is 3 weeks apart. I just want to confirm the timing on it, but the second one has typically covered general fund expenditures. So at the agency level, looking at the expenditures, where we're at in total. And then the third meeting, which is right now scheduled for election day, at a 2 o'clock legislative meeting. That one is typically looking at the whole budget, so all the other funds, just kind of looking at the budget as a whole, be a preview of the December 2nd budget adoption meeting. So those are the 3 public meetings. Those are the 3 public meetings. I know there was typically the first and third. Last year, we had the second one at a 5 o'clock meeting. I know attendance was sparse. So I didn't know if we were still doing a 5 o'clock for the second one, or if we were just doing them all after the 2 o'clock legislative. So that's why I just said timing on that one in question mark. I know there was some discussion, but I don't know if we had a final answer on that. So that Jim would need, or excuse me, Mr. Nation would need that in his posting also for timing, so.
Which date are you?
The October 15th.
Oh, right. The second one.
Yes, last year we did that second one at 5 o'clock.
5:30.
Was it
5:30.
Oh,
Yeah.
5:30, okay, excuse me, at 5:30. And we didn't have anybody show up last year's.
I'm happy to do it at 5:30.
Okay.
I think, that we provided an opportunity for people to come in the evening because those are continuation of those meetings. So they can speak to any topic on the budget. Because we have public comment on the budget, so.
That's correct.
Was it Halloween last year? Is that, I'm right on that?
It was.
Close to,
Or do we avoid Halloween?
I can't remember.
we narrowly avoided.
Pretty scary.
We avoided it,
Scary
but-
topic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm happy to do it.
All right, so we've got that set then for 5:30 on public roundtable number 2 on 10. And then all 3 meetings, the public will be able to speak if they have budget comments. Perfect.
We'll prepare that notice, Madam Chair, and we'll have that for the board. I think we could bring it on either today, tomorrow afternoon, or next week, whatever the board's direction is. This is just to set those roundtable public meetings, public hearing meetings, as Randy's alluded to.
Can we just do it at the 2 o'clock next week?
We certainly can. I think that, yes, we can. That is correct. We can. So it's all ready to go. We'll bring it on 2 o'clock next week.
And then Randy had a problem with his calendar, apparently, if you scroll back up, Ron. I said 9:28 meeting question, that's a Saturday, so
like,
I'd prefer to do 9:30, but
We've
again, we are
we've
not
done
scheduled.
Saturday before.
We could do Saturday again.
Remember? We met over at the boardroom over at the PFD,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did.
at the arena.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Crickets. Crickets showed up.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember that? Yeah.
So Mike, I know right now, I do not believe we are scheduled for Monday, 9:30 to have a meeting. If you would like, we could have more budget meetings on that date, if that.
I would say we should reserve it. We can always cancel it if we
Perfect.
don't have, because that's gonna be the time when we have departments that
You can have the departments come in, yeah.
that we need to talk to. Easier to cancel. Which one? On
The 9:30, it says 9:28 on the screen,
Which I think is
Commissioner
9:30.
Kearns, it's gonna be
Yeah.
Monday, 9:30.
So there's departments that we were identifying, that's the time to have.
I was flying back for a trip, but I'm flying back from a trip that day, but I can adjust if needed or zoom in. So I think it's good to have it on there, because it may take, we might need all these times to schedule all the departments and have the conversations.
Yes.
And I know this year it's a little more challenging than last year, and so we need the time to have those conversations.
Currently, we do have a meeting scheduled for 10/7. And so then the question, Monday, October 7th, excuse me. Monday, October 14th probably is not, that works for us. It's Columbus Day. We are open that day because we take the day after Thanksgiving instead. So we could just put a placeholder there, Commissioner CUNY.
I would say so, just at this point in time, till we get the, again, almost till November, yeah.
The following day, of course, October 15th is public roundtable number 2. The next scheduled Monday morning meeting would be the third Monday, which is October 21st. My question here is, do we want to continue the meeting on that date? I know the sale of the general airport revenue bonds is scheduled for that week. I know Commissioner CUNY will not be here that day.
I think you still just have to, at this point, we're not gonna potentially have all the commissioners available, we just gotta have the meetings.
I'll be here.
Thank you.
And then probably the next one is, do you want to just schedule the following Monday? Do we want to just put that as a placeholder for everybody on October 28th?
I would.
And then we'll just do the next, I guess we'll do November 4th. That's our normal one. We could do November 11th. That would be,
That will not work.
that won't work because that's Veterans Day. It's a holiday. We won't be in session that day. So the 4th will actually be the last Monday prior to the special meeting for the property tax levy on 11/18. That's the Monday before everybody
Goes to-
goes to Wasack, correct? Down in Vancouver.
Yes.
And what
Some of
time
us
was,
may be there. and
some of us may be
zooming
dialed in. And did we have a time set for that meeting? I don't remember.
in.
The 4th and 18th.
The 18th.
The 18th, the levy hearing date, we usually do it during your 2 o'clock consent agenda. And just to remind, that's what we normally
Well-
done, that's the levy one, where we actually.
Okay, so this is not on a Tuesday. We're doing a special meeting on this one because
Oh.
the commissioners will be down at Wasack.
Okay.
Just because of Thanksgiving, everything got squished on us this year.
We have to give 10 days notice, Madam Chair, for that. And so as long as we give 10 days notice, we can have it on
We
the
could do it
day.
9 AM.
Or 9 AM, whatever time you want. I want to remind the board, when staff prepares the notice of the levy, we always advertise it as a range from no increase to the 1% increase for all three funds, and we always usually add if you will, a transfer or a shift of road fund and the maximum amount. So we have all the options available for the board. We don't know what the board will want to do, so we put them all in there. So that's what we'll do this time too, unless I hear the board say something different right now. So that's what we've done in the past years, Madam Chair.
So my question is, what time, I guess, would you like that special meeting held? Would you like it at 9 AM?
I would just do it. 9.
On the 18th.
Yes.
Yeah.
9 AM works for everybody.
So we should get that on the calendar and noticed.
And Gina, you'll make sure all these get on our calendars.
I'm updating this file right now, so when I save back out there, it will be updated. So.
It'll update all our calendars.
No, probably not that. That I'll leave to Gina.
Thank you.
Will you circulate that?
That's
It'll be in the shared folder, and so you will have access to.
But we'll make sure that Gina.
Puts it on.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Gina should have access.
And
We're
then
getting
they'll-
them as we speak. She's on top.
Gina.
Very good.
And then the very last thing that I have on our calendar right now is for December 2nd. That is the date for budget adoption. That is the first Monday in December. And then I also put on that date the property tax levy certification. Again, we do have a little room that we could push that back if the commissioner so desired, but that is the official first or the official date that the budget should be adopted by, but you can get pushed back if so needed.
Madam Chair, the law provides, as Randy's indicated, that we have to hold our optional public hearing on December 2nd. We have 5 business days to make a decision on the ultimate budget. But normally speaking, board members, we'd like to adopt it on the public hearing date, which would be the 2nd. Once we adopt the budget, then we certify to the assessor's office the amount of money which we want them to levy. And that's why Randy has the second thing, which is the property tax levy certification. So that's the second thing we do after we adopt our budget, and that's just standard and it's required by the law.
It includes all the jurisdictions within all the special purpose districts and any ballot measures that have passed, correct?
That is correct. That is correct, Madam Chair. And the only other matter that I would draw to the board's attention is when we hold our by law, the Board of County, by law, small taxing districts give to the Board of County Commissioners on an annual basis the amount of money they want the board and the assessor to levy for the following calendar year. And so by the last day of November, the Board of County Commissioners certifies this information that we get to the assessor's office. And so I think the last hearing date we're going to have is going to be the 18th. Is that correct? In November?
That will be the last November meeting of
Yeah.
the board.
So on that date, board members will also have the certification of all the taxing levies from, taxing amounts from the small districts. We'll have to update that in December, however, because some people file on the 30th after our last meeting day. So, but we've got all this down. We're used to what to do. We won't let anything slip through the cracks.
And just for,
Do we send out an email or letter to somebody, to all the taxing districts?
The assessor's office, you ask a good question, madam. The assessor's office contacts each taxing district to remind them of their responsibility. And so they're very good about doing that. And then, of course, we help them to the extent we can.
and November 30th this
Yes.
year is a Saturday, so the first business day after is
It'd be the
actually Monday, December 2nd.
So we had a challenge last year, as I remember, it was either last year or year before last, one of the jurisdictions, small cities. Didn't get their information in a timely fashion.
Well, that's Commissioner French, there are some unique circumstances, and yes, one district didn't get it in on the November 30th date, but the assessor's office, there's a second date they have the ability to meet. And so this particular district did meet that date, but that's why Chair CUNY asked Mr. Maceo, is the assessor's office going to formally advise all the entities to get their information in? And they will do that, and I'll remind Mr. Havermill of that as soon as this meeting's over, Madam Chair.
Cause it's a little fire districts. isn't it?
Yes,
Stuff
yeah,
too.
and the small municipalities, the cities and the towns, sometimes they forget things. Because they got a lot, they don't have a lot of staff like we have.
Or some have had a change in their little clerks.
That's correct.
That are part-time.
We've been down this road before, right? Because they don't get it in, then they get last year's levy amount, and that might not be what they need. And so if the voters vote in a special levy and they don't get the certification to us, they don't get that special levy. So we've been down this road. We'll, hopefully that won't happen again, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I think we've got the schedule now. We, as you know, we can always add to this if there's things we want to put on. And this is where we will keep the schedule though, in that route directory. Ron, if you,
So Jim, if we cancel a meeting, is there some notice that we have to get for canceling?
Well, generally speaking, Madam Chair, if we cancel a meeting, I like to have a formal notice canceling the meeting and put it on the schedule if that's the case.
Right, but if we're not deciding till like the Wednesday before, then we don't need that next Monday meeting.
Right.
What is our time frame?
Well, cancel me, you can do it anytime before the public hearing, Madam Chair, as long as we just give notice of the people. The only meetings I'm really concerned about are the ones we legally have to have. When we
I just-
advertise, yeah.
Cause I'm just wondering if
like the Monday meeting.
we set this agenda and we
Yes.
put this agenda out, but the Monday meetings are not public hearings.
Right.
But if do we have a time frame that I need to cancel that?
Well,
That's
well, it's
what I
not
guess
clear
I
in
missed.
that. Usually speaking, anytime before the meeting, Madam Chair, that you can cancel it.
I mean, it would be the Friday before.
Yes.
We would notice,
That is correct, Madam
so,
Chair. That's the way we would do it.
okay. Just wanna make sure as we go through agendas and stuff that I'm clear. So we can cancel those, set them as meeting dates now and
Yes.
cancel them.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
The next thing I just wanted to show you, if you go to that root directory again, Ron. Go to the file folder, the 2025. And then if you go to the general fund. Inside of there is a spreadsheet called 2025 Additional Budget Request Decision Guide. So you will each want to download this. If you want to open that spreadsheet, Ron, we can just show them what that looks like. So at the top, looks like, Tessa, I'll let you.
This is meant to function similar to some of the capital decision guides we've produced before. So you all can kind of download this, save it, and plan what you think you may want to fund in the 2025 budget. So there is the BOCC adjustment column. You can enter any amount to your heart's content in there. And you will see kind of the live math happen there at the totals up top. And the totals are frozen, so as you scroll, you can continue to see that as you work
So
through the
Ron, if you go
spreadsheet.
to cell H7 on that spreadsheet, the first line under animal control, if you entered 100,000 into that cell, it should go down. Not doing math, so we'll have to tweak that. It should say that you only have 9,849,000 left and that you've used 100,000. Apparently, we have a spreadsheet.
We're editing to the
issue.
last minute Friday afternoon, apologies.
So we will get that fixed before you download it. But that is what the intent is. Yes, a little worksheet for each commissioner to have, you know, as you're going through the book. This is what I would like to add back. Or as we make decisions, we can memorialize it here in the master spreadsheet.
And so each line has a corresponding document in that large budget book that is in that shared folder in PDF. So these are all add back requests that were received as of last week. So there are some groups that haven't finished compiling things. They may just want to be having a conversation with you all instead of producing some documents. So we kind of may not have everything fully captured here, but as more submissions come in, we can always continue to update this.
And this is,
Just a second.
oh, I'm sorry.
So you will keep updating the shared document as they come in?
Yes.
Are there any departments that you expect haven't come in that will come in with a written add back request?
We do anticipate that we'll receive requests from the sheriff's office that have not yet received.
So we haven't gotten any from them yet.
That is correct.
Any
There,
other big ones?
prosecutor would be the next largest, I would say.
We did receive a document from them. It is included, but
It's not detailed. So
Can I follow up real quick? So for requested budget increase and budget capacity remaining, I assume requested budget increase just comes from the requests that have been sent to the office so far. And it will probably go higher once more come in.
correct.
Where does the budget capacity remaining number come from?
that is the difference between our projected revenue and the 2024 target budget or people that were below, submissions below budget.
It's the first page of that PDF document that has kind of the general fund revenues over expenses. Should memorialize that net number.
So on August 19th, when we kind of looked at the original roll up, and that's when we decided to target the 24 vacancies, but add back all the people. We were looking at a shortfall of about 19.5 million. A number of departments have gone in and said, well, if I have to cut down to 2024, this is how I would do it. Here's some of the add backs in the order that I would like them if we have enough money. For example, one of the large one was detention services. You know, we did not have to say in our report last Tuesday that they had a adjustment to target because they had already gone through and identified what they would cut, but what they would like to add back in the order they would like to add back. And again, this remaining budget capacity does not include any capital. So to the extent that you want money for capital, that reduces what you can also use for departments, which is why we'll roll out the capital next.
So for the actual requests, is it a mix of things that are already funded in 24 versus brand new requests?
If it's people, they were already authorized in 24.
There are some agencies that did request additional FTEs or additional funding. above and beyond what they already had in their 24 budget or would have reasonably had kind of authorized in their 25 planning FTEs.
Would it be possible? I'm just trying to, I think this is a really helpful tool, but it might help trying to understand what is actually like a cut versus something new, right? And I know that that's based on the department's own decision making and what they would recommend be the first thing to cut if they had to stay flat. But it might be helpful to add a column that has a checkbox next to it that says like currently funded already or currently
I
exists.
guess if you look at the Animal Control Service representative, they currently have 2, they would like to go to 3, I believe. So that is partially a keep what I have, but partially a new request. So it's not always, but that's, you get that by reading through their sheet where they
Their
said this is
narrative.
the narrative, yes.
Okay.
So anyway, here's this sheet.
And Randy, there's, I mean, I'll probably shoot you an email, but there's a few things on here that I'm gonna need kind of additional there's acronyms used or things where I'm not sure what this, like, under the clerk staff from Fund 103 to General Fund.
So what that is,
I don't know
so
what that is.
Fund 103 is the auditor's O&M fund. So that is historical preservation money from filing fees. So there's, I think it's $1 per, I forget the,
Yeah, it's a surcharge.
it's a
on recording
surcharge on
documents.
recording.
Okay.
And that goes into the auditor's O&M fund per statute, and that is for historical document preservation. For the last number of years, that has funded 2 employees that are sitting in the recording office, and it was funding 3 people in the clerk's office. That fund is declining in revenue, and so that funding source will dry up. So if that funding source dries up, we have 2 choices. We either find another source of revenue for that employee, or we don't have typically like a grant funded, typically the employment ends for that person, or we have other sources. They are asking to move those people back to the general fund, which is of course already strained. So that is a decision.
And then under civil service, M&O, which S&B reimbursement.
Salary and benefits.
Oh, salary and benefit, okay. They tied it with M&O.
Yeah.
Okay.
They had to include both to be
M&O
able to
and
afford their.
S&B, okay.
Yep.
Got
So a
it.
lot of the small departments, like you think of Board of Equalization, they really don't have any M&O. They pay 13,000 a year to the 6 commissioners, and they have 2 staff. Other than cutting salaries or turning people into less than full-time, there's no way they could maintain flat, because they don't have M&O. They have no M&O budget anyway, so it's like there's no place for them to cut for 2-step increases or things like that. So. Okay. So then I think the last thing else that we really had was, if you want to start going through the books, we can look at certain agencies, or if you want to say which agencies do we want to have present, and then start scheduling them. When do you want them to present? Which Mondays? Or if you want to wait on that till next week, up to you.
Yeah, I think that'd be the decision next week to.
Give you time to look at this before.
Yeah, because it sounds like next Monday you've got a pretty full schedule,
We have a full schedule,
so.
but we could definitely set agencies to schedule into the future.
Right,
Yes.
next
Yeah,
Monday,
next
so I
Monday.
mean, I think that gives everybody a chance to kind of take a look and see what they're thinking and.
It gives you all time to look at the book. I know it was little later than we would have liked. It was a week later than we would have liked, but with this shift in direction this year, it's where we had to go. So next year will be easier.
Madam Chair, do we want to maybe start emailing you suggestions or emailing Randy about who we think we might want to hear
You
from?
you could email Tessa and I would be good.
Tessa and CC Randy.
She'll keep them.
Okay, because just so we can start to get a list and then it takes a while to schedule folks and
to give them time
Right.
prepared.
right, to know if they're on this week or that week so they can get their materials put together. Okay. I mean, we probably know some of the large groups that we probably want to hear from. Like I know already, I know detention services sent in, from what I understand, you said a couple weeks ago, they sent in like what they would cut out of their budget and then kind of like their first priorities or second. So like having a presentation on that. So understanding how many detention officers are we talking about? What are the impacts, right? That's, I know I'd love to hear from them
Yeah,
already.
and the written narrative is included, so you can kind of get a head start on understanding the
So
request,
then-
but yeah, I think hearing it contextualized from the
Then
department
doing
will be
follow-up
very valuable.
questions, okay.
And can I, some of these are also kind of vague on what they would, Superior Court, trial court operations. But it's, 450,000, but I mean, that,
We agree
did they send
that
any type of, this is what we consider trial court operations that they send them?
They did,
Oh, okay,
I don't know. So
okay.
I know, and we
Careful.
really, we reviewed some of these, and we only touched for formatting on,
Like little notes.
the
Okay.
things that were sent in. So, yeah, they did. It's, salary predominantly,
Salary,
is what the
for
request
who?
is saying.
good, cause I know
Trial
this
court.
district court, I know had judicial salary increases spelled out on theirs.
Yes, and it is
So-
reading as though it's salary and benefit costs for judicial officers are set by the Citizens Commission at the state level. And then, and that's essentially,
Yeah, I think, wasn't there a big increase for judges this last year?
there was a healthy one.
yes, that
Yeah.
started this year, yes. Yeah.
So it would have been kind of baked into the 24th budget. That was their target, as well as the 13th judge and courtroom was included in the 24 budget target for Superior Court. So this is how they would, they're requesting the funds to be able to have all judges and all staff 100% of 2025.
So for example, right now you have JAs, you have one per judge. Do you have to have one per judge would be the questions. Do you need as many
Court reporters.
things like?
Well, I would assume we're required to pay the judges the set amount that the state set.
Right.
What, I mean,
So the
we
only
know
other.
what portion of that is, what that is of the 450,000.
That's the 25 salary that's set, I don't know.
I believe they did the salary from, and the state always, it's always June through
It's-
July, so we have half of 25. No, but not the end of 25.
It's not the state calendar.
Yeah,
Right. So the only place to cut would be, you wouldn't be able to reduce the judicial salary, but the places where they could cut is, do I need a JA for each person? Or do we start sharing JAs, court reporters, things like that?
other court administrative staff, things like that.
Or what does a court commissioner pay? They're not equal to a
They
superior.
are,
They are a percentage of a Superior Court judge, and that is also dictated by the state.
Okay, but are they asking for them to be that percentage, or are they asking for them to be above and beyond that as a part of that additional 450?
May need
No.
the department to clarify that.
Okay.
I don't believe the salary commissioner sets the salary of court commissioners, but they may very well at a certain percentage of the Superior Court judges. And as we know, correct me please, I think we pay 50% of Superior Court judges' salary, if I recall, and we pay 50% of the prosecutor's salary. The state picks up the other half. We pay all the salary of the district court judges. That's my recollection. Correct me, Tessa, please.
That is accurate. And the district court judge salary is set similar to the
The
Superior
state
Court judge.
salary commission sets their salary also.
Okay.
And we have no flexibility in that regard.
So,
But
so
on
some of
commissioners, we would
these,
Take the whole charge and the state doesn't share.
so would I be correct in saying then for the district court, their number was a judicial salary increase is 88,000?
There, you
We
don't
would
have. a-
have to do that. Okay, which of these items on here, I guess? 'Cause
There may be other ways that the department could manage to their target budget,
Okay,
but have submitted it as requesting for those funds as opposed to something else.
okay, understood.
But in like in the clerk's office, I thought when, like item two on the clerk's office, that the funds coming from 103 to the general fund, but that's also offset revenue that's going in.
It is not, so what his item there is Fund 103 has had a declining balance and will ultimately cannot support 5 people in it. So what he's asking is, as his people are run out of funding in 103, he's asking for the general fund to pay for it, not revenue coming from it. So it's
There's no
just the
additional revenue.
expense, right? No additional revenue, just the expense of an employee.
So I thought there's still the real estate excise. There's some tax
There is a recording
that helps
surcharge
pays.
that goes into document preservation, which is the Fund 103 for the auditor's O and M fund. That's correct.
Right, and all those used to be part of 103. The five.
And it was funding 5, it has been historically funding 5 people for document preservation, 2 in recording, 3 in the clerk's office. The balance with recordings down, the balance in that fund has been reducing. And I know Auditor Dalton is concerned that they will run out of money, so they are looking at cutting funding for positions out of that to slow the rate of running out of money in that fund currently.
But I didn't think it was enough to take all 3 of the clerk's position out.
I would have,
I thought it certainly was taking one would
Yes.
go away.
and I think that is part of the discussions is probably one a year, but I have not spoken. I have not personally spoken to Auditor Dalton after I just talked to the clerk last Fridays.
Cause I'm just trying to see if
Yeah.
if there is an offset of some of those funds, that we would need to know that as well, cause otherwise we're not
Yeah.
getting the full picture.
Because right now, there would be no revenue coming to the general fund based on that request. That would only be cost.
Can you remind me, on the preliminary budget general fund overview? The preliminary budgeted expense for general fund is 247 something. Last year was 265.9. Obviously for preliminary proposal this year, but their capital's out for the
Right.
starting point. What was the reason why the services was down again from 66 to 60? I'm just trying to understand the starting point relative to last year and better. So the services went down, expenses from 67 to 60, is that, or what was that? What was the reason
That
for
is
that?
the way departments submitted budgets to manage to their total target dollar. So some departments have chosen to cut deeper in services or supplies as opposed
Oh.
to staffing.
Got it.
accommodations.
What would that include in theory?
It could include things like nap care, it could include any professional service that you buy from the outside, so, lawyers, it could, consultants, a
Expert
lot of,
witness fees, all, I mean, it could run the gamut of.
So I think as, you know, since we're all just seeing this for the first time, as we take a look at it, then you
Yeah.
probably need to be available this week.
we will definitely be available this week.
Help answer questions
as you
before
go-
Monday's meeting.
And as you go into it, you will see the summary for that agency, like, let's just say animal control. And then the second page after that is the detail by account, showing you 23, 22 actual, 23 actual, 24 budget, 25 budget by account. So you will see that detail. So that is gonna also help when you see a four services are an account that begin with the number 4. So you can see where those changes are. Supplies begin with a 3, salaries 1, benefits 2.
And I know you specifically stated you haven't received the sheriff's requests yet, but the other departments that don't have anything listed, is that they have they indicated that they don't have an additional ask? Or you just haven't received anything yet?
We didn't receive anything.
Okay, have any of the departments said, like, no, I'm good, I don't have an additional request, or if it's blank, it just means they haven't responded?
A little bit of both. Well, it's kind of, I'd say it's 3. It's, I can't do the cut. And I'm not going to put in a cut that I can't do.
So I think we need to have a column.
make me.
Yes, I think there needs to be a column next to it so we know who, or.
Yeah.
Or highlight them in different colors and do a color coding, just to make sure it stays in, you know, a format that's readable. When we print it, to just say, you know. A yellow highlight is, they aren't making any cuts, blue highlighter, you know, so.
We
they
can go
Haven't got
to
back
that,
to us.
yeah. And then some of them made cuts halfway down, maybe, and then stop there, so
Yeah.
we'll give you a little key, index key on.
I mean, because there's certainly, I mean, yes, cost of living has gone up. I mean, we were paying more in wages. But yes, how do we? How do we do it?
Exactly.
So on that note, I like the color coding idea. But wouldn't we see something? So let's say you asked a department to look for $500,000 and they said, well, we found 200,000, but then to get to that 500, we'd have to eliminate 2 positions that are necessary, you know, so that's their argument. Is that all clear if we're gonna go down in their narratives, or did they actually fill out a sheet saying, okay, here's the 200,000 we've cut,
You should.
or that we're proposing?
You
right?
should be able to see, if the department was unable to, or did not submit, to their full 24 target budget.
Right.
There is a line in there that's called 25 budget match to target, or 2025 target adjustments. So anywhere you see a negative amount with that line, and it's near the top of the expense details, and it's at the very bottom of the agency's summary expenses, in the fund balance line. And so that is any adjustments that we would have made to help an agency get to their target budget.
But we can color code that for you, so
Right, 'cause
Commissioner
I-
Walter, to your
Yeah.
point.
There are some agencies that have tried to make an effort, but they're concerned about going the full amount would have some
We did
implications.
put in an amount there to get them the full way. That would be a different color than somebody that didn't do anything.
Right, right.
Yes,
That's,
so we can
some have
say-
submitted
we
all,
can- yes.
some or none.
So that is, yes, we can color code it so you know.
That would be helpful.
Have we? And number of boards I sit on, so I'm not sure. where we were at here, have we projected what we're going to offer in terms of a COLA for next year? Is it 3%?
We did include that in this budget, so if we don't do that, now that just affects the non-reps.
That's what I was talking about, the non-reps.
Yes, so we did, so I know most of the union contracts, well, a lot of them end at the end of this year. The ones that have so far been settled, I believe their 25 amount was a 3%, and so that has been built in here, but you guys have not made that decision, so we can give you what that cost of that is as well.
Yeah, I think those are some of the assumptions. That
Yes,
you're gonna be giving
that
us
was an
next Monday.
assumption, yep.
And next Monday, you're planning on giving us all your assumptions?
I can definitely
We'll
give you all
document
the
that.
assumptions.
Yes.
If we get that done earlier this.
I think we've probably got that already built together and should be able to get that out to you early this, or by the middle of the week, so.
And you also, is there any kind of high level vacancy or staffing information you can give? I see it broken down by department, but it looks like, I'm assuming if they have if it's showing a vacant position by department, it's talking about an authorized position. It's not referencing any vacancy adjustment previously done
That
from
is
a budget perspective.
That is accurate.
I'm just curious, kind of, are we more staffed up than we were last year in terms of actual filled positions versus authorized, that type of thing would be interesting to look
I
at
would-
in a big picture.
I would say big picture, I believe we are, because as the economy gets worse, people tend to gravitate toward government jobs from a safety standpoint.
It,
Perceived safety standpoint.
I'd love to have a number.
We
put to
can,
that.
we can add the number, actually, I know we can get that to you, because Jason has that all. He will just add all of them together, so you will see filled positions 23, filled positions 22, filled positions as of last
Monday.
Monday.
Tuesday.
So we can definitely get you that.
I think, yeah, as you go through it, asking lots of questions of Tessa and Randy. Okay, the other, item that we had was the rental car,
Oh, yes, sorry.
the
Forgot all.
retail car.
So this
rental
is
sales
a
tax.
Randy kind of goof. I mistakenly had thought we had put in this year's budget and a set amount. So the Spokane Sports Commission, we had a 5-year agreement with them. During those 5 years, the commissioners allocated $220,000 a year out of the car rental tax. When we did last year, in November, I think it was November, they came in, asked for more than the 220,000, but I know we have other uses for that money. And so there was talk about just doing the same amount as last year. But there was never an agreement drawn up. So we do not have an agreement to give them any money this year. And that was typically done through a contract, I would say. Is that correct, Mr. Mason?
That's correct.
So question is, we had allocated the money, or we had put a placeholder not tied to their name, but an amount, so we can do an agreement without having to do a budget amendment. My question is, I made the assumption, I guess, that we were doing the same 220, but that was never in the budget document. So is that what the commissioners want to do? Mr. Anderson has pulled up the document. We will get it's the same contract that was done 5 years ago, in 2019, if that is your wish. It could be a 1-year contract just for 24. You could make it a longer contract if you want to do, let's say 24, 25. before they came back and did a presentation going forward, but just looking forward. What is the wish of the commissioners? So we draft any documents.
I think you guys all saw my email that I replied back, because I thought we put the 220 into our budget. That was my understanding when we did it, was that we were gonna fund them at the current level. We weren't funding them the additional because we knew we had potential other uses for those funds with other construction going on with parks. And they needed to come back and tell us why, because if you remember right, when they came, they were like, here's the total fund balance, the total amount of money in the fund. And so we want this much, and then we want the rest of it to go to the Valleys project. And we're like, okay, well, you can't just tell us that. We need understanding as to why, it was going from 220 to 400. And so I think we had all agreed to put the 220 in, to give to them.
And to my mistake, I thought the same thing, but I never memorialized it.
But also, we had asked,
And
I
yes,
thought we
to
wanted
have
them
them
to
come
come back and give us a little more depth on why they were asking for that extra roughly 180, and they never came back. And then I know when I talked to Ashley, she had said that she's like, oh, well, I sent an email back, and it's like, well, I said, well, I didn't see any email from you, and so, yeah.
I think the email was,
She said she had sent an email.
We did get one, and it was more around their total budget, I think, for the, cause we're like, oh, this is a large increase. Can you kind of explain overall your total budget, and where this would land? And I mean, personally, I'm interested in the cross-country course in the Valley and what's going on with it, but I think we asked them like, who else is funding? Are you getting any state money? I never really fully
I don't know where they're
understood
at.
where
Yeah,
that,
I think
where
they're-
that project is. I'm still interested in funding it personally, but I need to
And-
understand where they are in their
But I
fundraising
think the city of
process.
Spokane Valley is using their LTAC money now that they pulled out of Visit Spokane. I think I've heard they're using their LTAC money to fund their project.
I would like to know just where the funding's at. I mean, because if they're in a situation where they've secured enough money to build it already and they don't need the 300 and change that they asked us for, well then,
Yeah.
then we
And I
don't
think
need to give it to them.
we need to know what the opportunities are. I think that was part of it too, what opportunities we have at the county.
Where the county could use that money, primarily right now would be Plants Ferry. Because it has to be used for youth sports, that's saying
Amateur sport.
amateur sports, can be used for acquiring, constructing, maintaining, or operating public sports stadium facilities, youth or amateur sport activities or facilities, or debt on public sports stadiums. So right now, we currently use it for Vista Stadia, M&O, Plants Ferry, M&O. Every other year, we give some money to the hub to redo their basketball courts, but Plants Ferry has a big upgrade, and that is high in youth and amateur sports with its soccer fields and softball fields. So, and that, our fund balance in there will not complete that project. I mean, it takes more than that. So,
Right,
that
and which is
would-
why we're doing it.
which is why we have other needs for it also versus the city of Spokane Valley's new parks. So.
Follow up, so you were suggesting, since there was a missed opportunity on the standard amount of funding that we have been giving to the sports association, Spokane Sports. You were suggesting, since it's getting close to the end of this year, that we enter into a potential contract for 2 years.
Now I guess
Well, I
that's
just-
my question.
If they want to come back and give us their presentation for next year,
Yes,
then we
I think-
could potentially.
I think at this point
I
in
could
time,
just do a 1 year. if
the
you
1 year,
like.
$220,000, just to give them the money currently, because I think they need the money.
For this year.
For
For
this
this
Yeah,
year.
for the 20.
Okay.
And then we look at what next year looks like, but.
So maybe that's when they can come back
Yes.
and give an update on the cross-country course, because,
Yes.
if a little bit of this fund could help them complete that project. I know there's other funders, but I would love to get an update. So maybe this is a good opportunity to
Yeah, because
get the contract for
again, they're
this
gonna
year
need
and
to
then have them
come
come
in-
back for next year.
need them to come in now anyway,
Right.
to then inform us what we're gonna do for next year's budget.
The valley owns the cross-country course. Wouldn't it be more appropriate if the representative from the valley came in?
They did
Kinda
have
told-
They
somebody,
did,
I
they
think
did
Morgan-
have.
Did they have somebody with them?
Mr. Bees.
Okay,
Was
did
with
they?
them,
Oh,
I
Mike
believe.
Bees.
was Mike or Morgan?
I think it was Mike.
Okay,
Mike was with them.
Some,
did they?
It was
Okay,
Morgan.
okay.
So, okay, I will proceed with the 1-year contract for the same amount.
for
And
2024.
for 2024 only, and I will get that in front of you as soon as we have that draft. Right. And I think that's
I mean,
all I have.
Can we just make a motion to do it now, Jim? And I open it up for public comment?
You can, Madam Chair,
we can
if
just
that's
have
the
it done.
option you'd like to follow.
I think so, because I think you've had conversations. I think they kind of were relying on some of those funds for their budget.
They had just, with the conversation that I had directly with Spokane Sports was just like, hey, well, we never heard back from you. And I said, well, we never heard back from you. So, no, the sort of dependency on the funds came from someone else, whether it was on their board, but directly from their executive director or CEO, it was more just, hey, we hadn't heard back from you. And I said, well, we were expecting you to come back in and we never saw you, so.
I'm happy to take a motion for the 2024 amount of 220,000, which is what we had in our budget.
Yeah.
And if I have a motion in a second, then I can open up for public testimony. We could just put this matter to rest for this year.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move that we allocate $220,000 from the car rental tax to Spokane Sports for expenses for calendar year 2024.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, as just stated. Since this is an action that was not on our formal agenda, I mean, other than if there was a placeholder for it. I would like to open it up for public testimony. So this is first call for anyone wishing to testify on the motion before us. You can raise your hand if you're on Zoom or press *9 if you're on the phone. Second call for anyone wishing to testify. Third and final call for anyone wishing to testify on the $220,000 rental car retail sales tax that was allocated to go to Spokane Sports. Seeing no one, I will close the public testimony and look to my commissioners. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
I
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
Madam Chair, can the board please authorize the chair to sign that contract as we've just approved it, other than an open meeting, please?
Madam Chair, do we need a contract with this?
Yes, we do. We need a contract because it's a large amount of money and
Okay.
that's what Mr. Anderson is working on at the present time.
So we shall amend the,
Well, no, I just think a nod from the board in this case.
Yes.
is everyone okay with the chair signing it other than an open public meeting?
yeah.
Yes. I see 5 head nods, so.
Thank you, Madam
We will
Chair.
sign it other than an open public. Thank you all very much.
And just as a point of information for you, Spokane Sports also does get money from the TPA, and they've been allocated more of that recently. So this year they'll probably get about 1.4 million, whereas last year they only had 1.2 million. So they do have other sources of.
Well, and I think that was one of the questions, was seeing where all their revenue sources were coming from and where their expenditures were and why there was this need, other than just the feeling of there was money there, so they were gonna spend it.
Because the TPA, excuse me, is the Tourism Promotion Assessment.
Oh, okay, yes.
So basically it's the monies from the hoteliers.
Okay, is there anything else to come before us under miscellaneous?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. While these two are here, the first subject I had was going to be the communications office recommending to the board, as we've done before, to send a press release on the budget roundtables, to invite the public's participation and make the media aware for media outreach purposes. So I will have something prepared if that's the desire of the board.
That's great.
Okay, and that schedule, was that approved today or will be
Yes.
approved tomorrow? Okay, so we can get that out forthwith. We also are anticipating the board's decision tomorrow on use of opioid settlement funds. And so I'm recommending to the board press release should that be awarded. Good, okay, and I think there's some folks from one of the entities that may be there tomorrow to speak. I heard about that. And I know there was a press release potential request, Commissioner Waldron, did you want to raise that the city on the working family tax credit for the board?
So I got an outreach from someone at the city who is a special projects person working for the mayor. There's as you may know, in Washington State, the working families that make a certain income are able to apply for some additional working families tax credit. And I think only, don't quote me on the numbers, but maybe only half of the families that are eligible in the last year have applied. And I think the deadline is coming up soon. And so I said, well, are you guys doing some sort of media release or anything that the county could, I mean, if the city wants to take the lead and put something together, then could the county share out information about the deadline for families over our communication channels? So I just wanted to bring that forward to see if that was of interest to the other commissioners.
So
I don't have any more information on what they're doing unless I got Pat in touch with folks at the city.
yeah, I think Sarah, right?
Yes, I'll check.
Sarah's like managing the project, but I think she was gonna get Pat in touch with the communications folks. But I mean, if they're gonna do a press event or some sort of media around it to get the word out to families before the deadline, I said, well, I'm happy to do what I can do, but the county can be a participant.
Yes, Sarah's the one that mentioned it to you, Clement Sampson.
So, I mean, it's funds that the state hasn't done, I'm starting to hear some outreach from the state, but I haven't heard a lot. I mean, it's really a state program. Again, if the city's spending their, if they wanna put money towards it, I mean, just knowing our budget, it's like,
Right.
I think last year we just said, let's put it on the website. I thought we had something on the website last year,
Social media, yeah.
so.
Yeah, I think she followed up with an ask, but I haven't even had time at the end of last week to review that for some funding to go towards. And I was encouraging them to consider earned media or free media opportunities. I was encouraging the city to consider going to all the school districts who have texting programs that go out to thousands of families with like an alert to let families know about this, because I think the school districts would support it. That it's something important that families could get. I think it's 200, they can get some, I'm not sure how much money that families can get back, but it helps at the beginning of the school year to have some money back in your pocket. So anyway, those are the suggestions I was giving. And I thought, as kind of commissioners, we have relationships with the different school districts. That could be I think you really need to make it really easy for people, like a text with a link to apply for the funds. And, I'm not sure and using the media, right, to get the word out across different TV and radio channels was what I was suggesting.
It looks like I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, it's a state program that they're doing that I don't wanna, it's kind of that continual. I don't wanna spend county dollars on a state program.
Hasn't it been on billboards all year
Yeah,
long?
it has. Yeah.
Yeah, so,
There's just, I think that in particular, they're thinking there's families in Spokane, we've had a lot of recent immigrant families where language can be a barrier or understanding our system and how to apply. And so I think that they're trying to target specifically recent immigrant or English as a second language families,
and then-
Marshallese.
and there's a lot of organizations that, it should be
Right.
those organizations that are helping with the outreach from the state, so.
I think they're looking to give grants to some of these these groups to do outreach and help people sign up for the funding.
Commissioners, to qualify for the working family tax credit, you have to also qualify for the earned income credit. So it's
Right.
basically the state version of the federal program. So if you haven't filed a tax return, you are not eligible for that. So, yeah, I would say it's more of a state program itself because it's the state EIC versus the federal EIC.
So I think happy that if we want to reach out to school districts and talk to them or reach out to these organizations, I mean, Launch Northwest would be a key one that could reach
Oh,
out
you know, that is a great idea.
to them. But
I will suggest that to Sarah, because right now Launch Northwest has all these outreach activities going on directly with families to get kids.
well, at least to those
Support.
organizations that
Yeah.
they can alert those organizations to make sure they're letting people know. But yeah, I just. I'm happy social media, we could do it or on the website, but I'm not interested as we look at our budget crisis. Paying, because again, I kind of look at it as an unfunded mandate that coming down, if we're gonna start to pay for those things that it sets up. Us up for, the tax credit or the credit that's happening for electric bills right now. It's like, I just don't wanna have the county be the one, happy to inform but not pay. Commissioner Jordan.
I was just gonna say, I had heard that there were quite a few people in our region who were potentially eligible who hadn't yet applied, and it sounds like it's a new. You have to apply to the State Department of Revenue, which is a new process for a lot of people, just not used to that. So I'd love to help get the word out in any way we can. It just seems like it's a great opportunity for lower income, more working class people to claim something that they're eligible for. If they can just get the paperwork and the awareness, it's money on the table for people in our community.
And there's actually a lot of people though, I mean, just even through Launch Northwest, we hear, who don't want to apply for these things.
Right.
So I mean, so it's not,
True.
I mean, just because they're eligible and they're missing it out, I mean, they may not want to. So I mean, again, happy to have them be aware of the opportunity, but knowing we're never gonna get 100% participation.
True.
So just so I have my numbers right, roughly 12,000 families applied this last year, bringing $9 million to the community. They're still believing that there's about 17,000 to 18,000 eligible on top of that haven't applied in the past. So the focus is really outreach to specific communities that may not be able to access information in English or have barriers around understanding the process of how to apply on the state website. So recent immigrant refugee families is one target. So yeah, the ask was to help supplement some outreach coordinators with SNAP and Raices, I don't know. An organization that's reaching out to Spanish speaking families. So
Maybe Chris, I'll let you reach out to Launch Northwest.
Yeah, Launch Northwest, I'm thinking that they may already be working with some of these organizations to outreach to families around education and after school and other opportunities. Could we connect the dots on that?
I think Chris will do that with Launch Northwest.
Okay.
And
I'll follow up
Commissioner
with,
can do whatever they, with the organizations they're aware of that they know.
well, I may meet with Sarah just to figure out if there's some coordination and I can follow up if we could be helpful reaching out to some of our school districts throughout the county. That was just my thought. I mean, if you want to reach like literally
I think we're gonna leave it up to
10,000 families. it's like-
commissioners to choose to do that. So yeah, so talk to Sarah and come back. And then if there's anyone that we can reach out to in our districts, happy to.
Okay.
So is there anything else, Ms. Lee?
Yeah, I have, sorry, a long laundry list here. Proclamation for youth sports officials. Martha Lou has that prepared. That will go tomorrow. And we'll have the individual there or individuals to receive it. Did want to mention, we had the taping of the KSPS interview on juvenile justice. Hoping to get an advance copy just to have one final check from legal to take a look. But the conversation and the script was all from approved language. That'll air Saturday, 9/21, and we'll snip pieces of it for social media. We have had several requests for press availability for the juvenile justice, both for the tax and the facility. And so we're working to coordinate that meeting with Tori hopefully this week, and we'd be looking to include commissioners or a commissioner for a media availability in the facility after we do a tour or before we do a tour. Ashley Callahan's already said, just work with Tori on it. She's going to defer to us to help with that outreach to the media, just to start raising a little awareness. We did show a preview of a video for juvenile justice at the COG meeting. I had that video available. We're making a few updates. It needs one last check from legal as well. But there was, both for the video, the mailer, and the website, a request from a commissioner to include some messaging, which the city has made part and pretty central from what I heard from Deputy City Administrator Maggie Gates, to communicate to the public what the tax exemptions are. And the mayor is saying food, medicine, and rent. I worked with Jim Amacio and had him review that language. Jim has a perspective on it. I do think it's important, as I've just taken an informal poll of people about, do they know what's taxed and what's not taxed under the sales tax? There's virtually no awareness. Not even, I mean, most people know food, but prescription medicines or residential rents hasn't triggered in a lot of people's minds. In the past, we did communicate under the public safety tax that vehicle purchases and leases were exempt, just those two items, because that was specific to the RCW. There is a very long list on the DOR's website of things that are not subject to the sales tax. But my suggestion, just taking a commissioner's suggestion, would be to include in our messaging 3 common things as examples. Grocery foods, prescription medicines, and rents on residential properties. So I bring that to the board for kind of concurrence, or if you agree with that recommendation. One commissioner's proposed it. Again, it has been something we communicated in the past in a limited way. It's something the city's doing. So.
I mean, I guess I don't have a problem other than if you start to list some items, you have to still give a disclaimer that, and other items,
Yes.
you know, or something like that. Just so it doesn't seem like that is the only items.
Right.
If there's a legal perspective on it, can we hear that in an executive session or however is appropriate? It sounds like a good idea. I just don't know if we're missing something.
Well, board members, I think Pat is, I don't mind making this statement, Madam Chair, in the open session. I think Pat has been very clear. There are hundreds of items which are exempt from the sales and use tax. And so some might argue that by listing just some and not all, you're kind of encouraging people to vote for the tax. And for instance, food is not all exempt. Some food is subject to the tax. So when you start putting some in and others, some might argue that that is not the best practice. Having said that, I think Commissioner Cuny, you just added some language which helps a lot. You say the 3 items, and then there are other items too. So I think that goes a long way, Pat, in addressing some of the shortcomings that some might argue. And I think that, Commissioner Cuny, that makes good sense. And although the city didn't add that, some cases, the 1/10 of 1% does exempt specific items. And I think, Pat, you alluded to that by statute. But most sales taxes that we adopt, they don't specifically say what it's not subject to. So, Madam Chair, I think if you were to add the additional language, it would be pretty hard for someone to take issue with what we're trying to state.
And on the website, you could have a live link
Yes.
to the DOR website where you
Exactly.
could look at every item that is.
Commissioner, you're absolutely, and that would be another a good suggestion to dispel any concerns people might have.
Right. Looks like we've got head nods, so we'll take your version of the language, which is similar to the version we have, and incorporate it and send it around for additional eyeballs. So The mail piece will be up next week as a postcard approval of the funds. We have a draft. It's not quite ready for prime time. It's going a few changes, but it will be a very similar postcard style to what we've done in the past. Just summarizing some stats and figures, what the tax is used for and how the county intends to use the funds going forward, which is how we're using them today, not for construction, but for existing operations, current operations, along with those 140 FTEs. We did add a website button for juvenile justice to the homepage at Commissioner's request, and we'll update all of our materials now with this piece. The last thing I would say is all of these items are available to the commissioners once they get final approval, hopefully by the end of the week, to take if you're speaking in front of community groups. So happy to provide them to your execs to make sure they have it, all the latest versions, or maybe one folder, kind of like the budget documents where here's your resources as you go out in the community. So if there's anything additional requested outside of our communications plan, that was one of the kind of penultimate items, but probably one of the more important ones is to help to get information to get into the wild with your education efforts.
Could I bring up one, when I've been out in the community chatting with folks about the juvenile justice sales tax and jails renewal, some folks, and I'm wondering if this is something that maybe it just belongs on the website or as further information. I know we were trying to be very careful to describe exactly what this sales tax pays for in the juvenile facility, detention facility, because there are other sources of funds that pay for other things that the juvenile justice system does out in the community, probation, community programs, the courts, there's state funding, there's other general funding. But I think, so what I'm hearing is some people think because we're not talking about those, and I realize why we didn't want to confuse and say, because these funds do not pay for probation. They do not pay for community alternative to incarceration programs that are out in the community. But those programs are happening. And so I've gotten some feedback that people say, well, it looks like you're not doing any alternative programs. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're doing lots of alternative programs. And they're really successful, but they're just not funded out of this sales tax. And we didn't want to be confusing about that. But what I'm hearing is people would like to know that we do all these other things, that they're just funded out of other sources of funding. Because it makes it appear that our main focus for our youth is detention only. And that's not really what we're hearing, that what we hear from Tori and her staff. There's a lot of the youth are not in detention facilities. They're being served out in the community through other programs. And so I just wanted to throw that out that, Pat, I was going to email you about that today, because if there's a way we could say there's all these other programs that our youth are taking advantage of, or take that section and kind of expand upon it a little bit, because anyway, maybe it's covered at that part of the fact sheet there, but I don't know if it was clear to some people. So that's just one feedback I got that I was like, oh, sure. If there's a way we can make that more clear, I'll bring that back.
And one thing to check with Tori on about this would be from her presentation at COG, it sounds like the corrections officers deliver a lot of the in detention programming.
Right.
So in a way, if those corrections officers, my understanding, are paid for from the tax, some of that programming is happening there. But yeah, this is the section I think we can draw from or build on when we're talking to folks with those kind of questions. Because the alternatives, the electronic monitoring, it sounds like we were the first to have it and one of the most successful in the state in our use of it, which means that they can be, there's a big dashboard in detention services and juvenile detention where they're tracking this. And then the diversion programs, the counseling, the education classes.
I guess you have a lot of that up
service,
there.
pain restitution.
Yeah.
But it's just keeping in mind those programs when you encounter these concerns, to say we are doing those. And in a sense, we talked about this in the budget group. If we didn't have a detention facility and we didn't have this funded, it's possible these programs wouldn't be possible, right? It's kind of a chicken and an egg.
And that's what I said. I know it sounds harsh, but if we don't have the funding for our detention facility and the programming that happens inside the facility, if we didn't have this sales tax paying for that, we'd have to use those other sales tax revenues that are going on with the outside community-based alternative programming, because legally we're required to have the detention facility. And so we can't, like, as a community, that's not a choice. Like, we need to have that facility. So I was trying to explain that to people that, you know, well, it's true that we have different sources of funding for different things. And if we didn't have this source of funding for the facility, it would potentially, we'd have to look at how much we can fund in terms of alternative programming, because that we'd have to move money around to continue to meet our state obligations, right? So anyway, it's hard to, it's nuanced, but I think in conversations with folks, that information is helpful.
I think it's.
The alternative is that we start shipping our kids out to Martin Hall. And boy, nobody wants to do that, including the judges.
I'm just gonna add, these FAQs are really helpful as you continue to talk to community members, for me, for how we might update this. I might think to add an FAQ specifically about that on the website and help us focus a little more attention on that, because I think the focus will yield some benefits in terms of media
We
questions.
might not have space on the fact sheet, but on the website, we can always add another FAQ and just run it by Jim for approval.
One other that came up, and I don't know that we have the data or the studies, but a commissioner relayed that at one of the community meetings, there was a question about how successful is the programming or the rehabilitation. And some of the studies are a bit dated. But that, I think, is another common question people will have, is if we emphasize too much that we're investing in programs, there may be another side of the equation somewhere in the spectrum that says, why are we investing in these programs? Do they even, you know, or what percent do they work? And I know Tori has some data that they do work. It's just not as current as it could be. But just something that has come up in the past, even as we think about the last measure, is people, from differing perspectives on the programs.
And when I brought that up, that the data was older, just because there hasn't been like a statistical study in a while, there were community members that said, oh, that's okay, I'm still interested in that data, you know, about, because it's not like the program will have changed necessarily. The impact of the program, if it was successful 10, 15 years ago, I mean, likely if the same program is being used.
I do think it's factual to say that Spokane County is considered a leader in the state, from what a number of you have told me at WASAC and others, regarded as a leader in our juvenile justice system, implementing the reforms the state has passed, but also having success with diversion, with the alternative programs. So I know that's more of a claim, and people are looking for data and evidence of that, but.
Say it.
All I have.
Chair, on this topic, as part of our budget process or something else, I think we talked about having some kind of strategic planning from a more budgetary perspective about what those funds fund, and if they're not renewed, what the choices may be that the board is faced with. I have been asked by people when I've been presenting in the community, you know, basically if the funds aren't renewed, what happens? And I don't have a clear answer because we haven't talked about those types of choices in a kind of planning session. So personally, I think it'd be, if we're able to, it would be wise and helpful information to talk about what it looks like if we don't have those dollars.
I would just say, if you don't have those dollars right now, we are struggling with, here's the 2024 budget, we've got another $7-8 million. If we don't have that, instead of saying we have the 24 budget, but we can add 7-8 million, you're gonna say, we're gonna cut 8 million off the 24 budget. That's really the difference. And so as hard as this is right now, you'd be going the other way.
But isn't it almost 16 million?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if we're up here today now, I'm 8, 9 million back to here, now I
Oh,
gotta keep
I see,
going
I
another 7, 8 back. That's, so you would, instead of,
Yes, and I was able to say that level, but it might
But-
be
but you don't-
helpful to get a little more specific on what
But I
the
mean,
real
that-
choices might be. No, I appreciate that.
yeah,
I just recall from Tori's presentation, there were two things and there was a media story on them. That was mental health or a nurse, I think, and she said those were somewhat discretionary. But she made the point that it would add additional costs if we had to send people to emergency rooms or something. So there was that data point that she offered. And then in our general messaging, we have adopted this. It would create an immediate budget shortfall, which would have to be made up to cuts to discretionary programming services. I think that's a broad bucket for a lot of the things that we do in addition that we're not statutorily required to do. But then it says, and other county services. And if that's the question is,
Departments we gotta come from.
what else could be offered up on the table? People have awareness of what those cuts would be if they're real world. If
I
that's the
think
question.
Commissioner CUNY said a core function for the county commissioners is the providing of a juvenile detention facility.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's Martin Hall or something else, and that's a term of art, isn't it, Commissioner? So
It could mean cuts to deputies. I mean, it's like, what are the other cuts that we could make that aren't discretionary?
it could mean you don't have a scope. You don't, I mean, there's a lot of different programs throughout the county that aren't discretionary, but are very valuable, that you would have to,
and to complicate it, Madam Chair, as we know, the courts are a separate branch of government, and so we'd have to work closely with them in this event and to determine what particular services and functions would have to be cut. So it complicates it somewhat.
You're gonna start to see as we go through the budget, where else we could potentially cut.
These are
But
my-
it's not gonna be, but
Is the WSU youth programs, the extension, is that discretionary? Like the 4-H programs?
cooperative extension, the commissioners. Yep. Support WSU extension through budget. WSU has to do the program, but the commissioners don't have to, not legally required to help support.
okay. Anything else? Commissioner French, like we're already way over, so let's just go.
This will be short. So there's been a new organization created called WREN, WREN. It's a Washington Rural Economic Network. It's been created by Sulani Manson and Jim Hedemark. They had their first public event this last Saturday, and I was one of the speakers at the event. And I was giving an update on the process that we were using for developing code around wind turbine farms. And I got an update list schedule from Scott on Friday, Scott Chesney on Friday, about when the hearings are going to be held by the planning commission, by us, and yada, yada, yada. But in the email from Scott, he said of the comments that they've received so far on the documents that we reviewed a week or two ago, he said the comments have been overwhelmingly negative. And there were about 80 people at Friday mornings or Saturday mornings meeting. And I would say, other than the two people that represented the wind turbine farms, the majority of the folks there were very negative about the introduction of wind turbine. And so I don't know where the conversation's going. I encouraged everybody to submit comments, be part of the process. And Sulani talked about, you know, what they've gone through with Lincoln County. And, you know, they said, you know, it took them 6 months and they're still, you know, still haven't adopted a final ordinance, but they're getting closer, but it required a lot of conversation and a lot of compromise on both sides until they were able to get to a document that nobody liked. And so, just wanted to give you a general update that, that organization one is now existing and is going to be doing more of these kind of informational sessions with people to try and spur engagement in the process. The other topics were solar power, water, and then we also had Pete Serrano there talking about the legislative process and statutory limitations at the state level. And then there was a presentation about the initiative process. So, but good crowd. I mean, 80+ people there. So just wanted to give you a FYI.
I just wanted to, and unfortunately Scott's not here, because Scott's on Shrek board. There was an article in the Inlander that said apparently the Shrek board did pass, it says they passed a motion to create a transition committee to request that 2 county commissioners join to help draft a response to the city on sort of their requests. And that's the first I had seen of that. I wasn't sure if Shrek had reached out to the board requesting 2 commissioners join.
No, I left the meeting before they did any of that.
Oh,
so I
okay.
have no idea.
We'll ask Scott tomorrow when he's in. So, but yeah, that was in the Inlander article, and I just thought, oh, that's interesting. 2 of us are going to be requested to join a transition committee to discuss some options about the city.
Isn't the composition of Shrek solely with the Board of County Commissioners? Or do they have?
The governance board is determined by the Board of County
Right.
Commissioners. I think Shrek would like to give a recommendation to the board.
Okay. Sure.
You're right, Chairman CUNY, the board does establish the governing body of Shrek because you set it up and you're the only entity that can change or modify the composition.
I believe we'll see that the recommendation, as I've been clear all along as a commissioner, that adding a 3rd person from the city, which is the police chief, if the city police come on board, would be what our original intent was. And what was the original makeup that our consultant at that point in time recommended would still be, I would be looking at that.
So,
But it's still a Board of County Commissioners that would change
Yes.
that.
so. I'm gonna try and pick my words. We've been in. The Shrek board has been engaged in this process with the city of Spokane for a long, long time. I mean, since we created the board. And it's like, we keep on kicking the can down the road and giving them one extension after another and after another. When is there any sense about, when do we just say, you know, fish or cut bait? Because,
It's up to the Shrek board.
pardon?
That piece is up to the Shrek board.
No, I know.
The hope was that after the 3-month extension with the new administration, there would be an answer. So that I was not part of that discussion with the Shrek board.
Okay.
I stated my position as a commissioner, as someone who was at all of those meetings, that on the governance, I still was. You know, the city hired their own consultant. That did not speak to the fact that if they did have city police come on board, that the original construct was to have that 3rd seat. So.
Yeah.
So we iterated that as a meeting.
Someone that's not part of the board does a study on the efficiency of the board. And then, I mean, just the whole thing just
Yeah.
reeks of arrogance.
So.
Okay,
So that was up
thank
to
you.
the Shrek board.
yeah, okay.
Like I said, I left at that part. I had another meeting I had to go to. So I have not heard that
Okay.
the transition committee
It's,
was gonna be, because it's really the Shrek board making, again, we are trying to, as I reiterated there, trying to keep electeds off of it and politics out of it,
Absolutely.
so.
it's an interesting inland article. You might wanna, it's not terribly long either, but
Yeah.
it's worth a read
Okay.
because it talks about the concepts of weighted voting and then using whatever method King County uses that requires,
There's a
you know, you
formula for
get 40%,
success.
it's, which is like a hybrid of weighted and it's,
So that was all, I think, in the, whatever, the consultant for the city.
yeah, it was one of their it was the consultant's recommendation.
They said
yes.
after going through what we've gone through at WACAC, I saw it.
No.
So, the other thing, yes, that, same thing, that was potential for a change coming on the Broadlink board, that the executive director was telling the city of the valley if they joined, they could have a seat at the board, and I said, that's a county commissioner decision, and at this point in time, we have Shrek to be dealing with before we deal with any other committees. So,
Okay.
So, we should be receiving a request, I guess, from Shrek to participate in some sort of conversation.
yeah, I have
Okay.
no idea, this is the first I've heard, so yes, so Scott should be
Yeah,
letting
we'll
us
have
know,
to,
or.
yeah, we
the
really
sheriff
need to get,
would be letting us know.
probably should be just having regular updates on board meetings and Scott getting our input, you know, so that we know.
Well, our only input with Shrek is the governance. That's
Yeah,
the
that's
only
it.
input that the Board of County Commissioners has on Shrek. Because Shrek, I mean, that was the whole design of Shrek, and Commissioner French, we were both on the committee, and
Yep.
there was city officials at that point in time, is that the board is the one who determines, they're the ones that are the experts in the public safety, the calls, and how all that is working. That we didn't want politics to be part of it. That was part of the design by the consultant at that time, as they helped form it. And so the only elected is Sheriff Knowles, because he is the chief law enforcement officer for the county, and we don't, you know, that's the only way. And then the rest are not electeds. They're all
Professionals.
representatives through the fire association, like Cody Burbach is there as a representative, their association. The city of Spokane, we have our administrator, because the funds come from the county over to Shrek, but again, not a political person, an elected. The city right now, it's the city administrator and the fire chief.
I think it's an assistant fire chief is the one that served.
Yes, they've chosen to do that. So again, because they're receiving those services, so they're helping drive what happens on the board. So the board is not, the only thing we do as county commissioners is determine for the funds to go over to Shrek, and we make an allocation each year. And then if the governance changes for any PDA, that comes before the county commissioners.
Right. So it sounds like there may be an opening for a conversation, and the city is looking to potentially, I have no idea, I haven't talked to anyone at the city yet, but sounds like there may be an opportunity to discuss the governance structure and if the city wants to be a full partner with their police dispatch. So, I mean, that was always the goal in the beginning.
Right, and the goal was always to have, if police comes over, it was to have the city. The
Have their
chief of-
police
chief
chief,
of police,
Yeah,
the
or
fire chief,
designee, yeah.
and then a city administrator, which gives them 3 positions. More than any, which is more than anybody else, so, but not a majority.
But since the inception, the city has always insisted that they have an elected official on the board. And we've consistently said no, and no, and hell no. Because if we were gonna have electeds on the board, we'd have county commissioners on there. But we've excluded the commissioners, we've excluded all electeds, because this is one that really needs to be run by the professionals. They're the front line, they're for life support and everything else. let the professionals do what they do. And so far it's worked really well. I mean, the call times and everything else has worked extremely well. So, but maybe it's because we don't have any elected officials on there, but we've been consistent for day one, no electeds, not us, not them.
So that's the first I'm hearing, so I'm sure we'll hear more later if they want to have county commissioners on it. I spent 3 months going back and forth on meetings, and then when the city decided to hire the consultant, then, we, that, but not. Yeah, I would say not in a productive way, because they wanted to wait till they heard back from their consultant, so. So anyway, okay, is there anything else? Seeing nothing, then I'm going to adjourn our meeting for this morning. It is 11:26. We're almost an hour over than we thought. And we will be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.